Chris earlier, that may be a benefit for folks that aren't actually on this phone call. But I like to at least let people know that I'm recording them. So you've been warned. And we'll get back to the deck here.
Would I also assume that you'll be able to flip the material to us after the call?
Absolutely. I can provide the deck itself as well as the recording once that's rendered. But absolutely, I will share that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it'd be great.
Of course. So I tend to get excited about this stuff. It's fun to me, and then I start to go maybe at a more rapid pace. So if I need to slow down as I'm going through a lot of these slides, just tell me to pump the brakes a little bit. But it is a lot of content, and we've got maybe 45 minutes of time. So I will try to be somewhat brisk through going through some of these areas. But to really sort of kick things off, I wanted to sort of paint this picture of intelligent business applications in the cloud. And Joel, you'd mentioned that you'd worked with NAV in the past. That's essentially just changed its name to Business Central. So you've got this sort of infinity loop of applications that Microsoft has that are all in the cloud, in Azure, hosted by Microsoft, and then these sort of ancillary technologies around those core ERP and CRM solutions. And we'll go through all of these different areas in a fair amount of detail, except actually minus the finance operations, HR, and commerce applications. Those are actually components of what used to be called Dynamics AX, which is the tier 1 product for Microsoft, competes with Oracle and SAP. So kind of further upstream than the clients that I believe we both kind of share, which are more in that small, medium, and corporate size space. Not in the tier 1 or willing to spend or able to spend millions of dollars to implement those kind of solutions. So just wanted to call that out, that you'll see those, but we won't necessarily talk much about them. But you see Business Central located here. So, what I plan to do is just sort of go through the different functional areas that the application has and provide some scenarios of engagements that we've done. So, essentially Business Central, it's a platform to connect people and processes in one single unified solution. Being able to share data quickly across key people throughout the company, giving everybody access to current and accurate data. So, again, we'll go through all the functional areas, but to start, we'll focus on the project management or jobs module. So, when you're performing a job, we've obviously been in these types of scenarios. The most important things are being on time and within budget. So, Business Central helps you create, manage, track customer projects, using timesheets, along with advanced job costing for reporting capabilities. You can, develop and modify and control your budgets so that you're making sure your projects are profitable, but also being able to manage resource levels by planning, for capacity and for upcoming sales, being able to track invoicing to customers against planned projects and orders and quotes, and then just being able to make, effective decisions in real time, based on project status or profitability or resource usage metrics. I can't talk for all of a sudden. And we're actually implementing a solution for a client right now. They implement security systems and audiovisual solutions and call systems, jobs that require materials and labor. And they're actually using this module plus an add-on that helps with estimating and materials planning, and AIA billing, job costing and subcontractor management. So it's, essentially a construction or GC type of solution that's much more deeper than just the core jobs module. But, just as an example of a project that we're actively working on that utilizes this functionality that's available from Business Central. Actually, I guess I meant to say this earlier. Some of these areas I'm just going to cover in this sort of one slide, but then in the operations section, I do have some click-through PowerPoint demonstration type examples to show some functionality, so we can go a little bit deeper there. But before I moved on beyond project management, because this is one of those single slide deliveries, I don't know if there's any questions or thoughts or comments about that particular module in the scheme of the entire solution.
I'm good.
And I know you guys haven't mentioned that you work with those types of companies. It's mainly the distribution and manufacturing, which is actually the next two sections that I wanted to discuss with you folks. So, operations as it pertains to manufacturing is actually kind of got varying levels of functionality based on a client's needs. So, whether you're doing, lightweight assemblies or kitting, or you're back flushing items, once they're produced, or performing full-on MRP. Business Central is a fit. It's got core functionality for discrete and repetitive manufacturing, job shop or custom manufacturing. And then there's some add-on products that can actually help for anybody that has process manufacturing requirements. And now we've actually done a project with a company that they manufacture custom decorative wood windows and cupolas and louvers. And they were originally using Mapix and migrated to Business Central, and they were able to increase their efficiency and production by 40%, just based on the tools to be able to manage costs compared to that legacy Mapix solution. And later in the presentation, I've got sort of another example of some manufacturing engagements that we've done. But as far as that being a concentration for what you folks see with your clients, with Joel's background and the systems that he works with, I felt like it's probably worth having just a conversation on this particular component. Any questions or thoughts that you guys have, or things that you want to throw at us as far as, have we done something before?
This very point, no. Are you going to go into some other detail later in the presentation, or?
So as far as manufacturing, I don't really have a click-through deck that represents that. I have an assemble to order type example, and then again, I just have another example later as far as another engagement that we've worked on. So if you have direct questions to throw at us, feel free to do so now.
Is there a sweet spot to the size an organization needs to be, what it needs to look like to be able to best utilize this platform, this solution?
I would say, as far as size to best utilize it, maybe not, but size to be able to afford it would probably be a different story. So I would say 20 million plus in revenue is a good sweet spot. We've certainly worked with companies that are smaller to implement, manufacturing solutions, but just being able to have the capital to invest in this type of a project, you need to be a little bit larger. We don't really look at folks based on employee counts or things like that. It's usually just the annual revenue numbers that we focus on for, what's a sort of a good fit for us.
So if I'm a say $20 to $30 million sales company, can you give me a ballpark total project cost to implement Business Central?
Now that I do have on some slides later, if you're willing to wait, Chris.
That's fine. That's good. That's good. Yep, that's fine.
Okay. Perhaps a general technical question. What is, if there's another system that will produce a bill of materials with quantities and items for any given job or on a product basis, what are sort of the integration options, and what's the database like in the software?
Sure. So there's also, in terms of level of access, like a lot of SaaS software, if you go with sort of the full online Microsoft hosted version, you don't really get access to the database. Right. Regardless of how you do it, for the most part, that actual database is mostly abstracted. You're not usually doing much with it directly. So generally speaking, those sorts of integrations are kind of best through some sort of web service call, oftentimes combined with custom code on that you can install relatively easily on the server to sort of interpret those incoming messages and put them in the right place. In terms of the actual database structure, it's relatively straightforward. It's kind of what you'd expect. Most of the there's tables. They have names that are at least reasonably close to what they actually have in them, and column names, that kind of stuff. Regular relational database stuff.
Yeah, I think web service is the short answer there. That's
that is the one word answer or one phrase answer.
okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions before I move on to another operational area for service? And we can always come back to questions if we need. So sort of consider another area of operations is the service delivery. And this is slightly more geared towards in-house service or repair business versus a field service. Although you could absolutely have it used for field service or certainly a combination of in-house and field service. But essentially this module is helping with managing customer cases and their service contracts, any service items that they have, scheduling repairs and maintenance, whether that is receiving the customer asset into your shop and scheduling a resource and work center, or dispatching a field service out to the field to go to a customer site to do the service. But completing the work orders, you can do troubleshooting steps, track faults and resolutions, and then ultimately either ship that asset back to the customer or leave their work site and do all the billing accordingly. And we've actually worked with a spindle manufacturer and service repair shop. They were using QuickBooks, and they moved to Business Central, and they were actually able to do have better control over scheduling, over their quality control, better manage on-hand inventory, and they're actually able to see their warranty rates decrease from 16% to 2.5%, and their on-time delivery rate went up from 65 to 94%. So they became a lot more efficient, but also a lot more profitable, just being able to better manage the inventory and the customer assets.
When you say
mm-hmm.
spindle, was that a CNC spindle company?
Do you know if it was specifically for CNC machines? I'm not entirely sure what the spindles were used for.
I would say yes. I think it definitely is a spindle company. And as far as the mechanics, to what machines that would apply to, I don't know, but
Okay.
that was their primary line of business.
Was CNC machines?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
That wasn't the only thing they did, but their primary.
Okay.
So also sort of incorporated in operations and also had its own icon on that circular graph on the blue page, but supply chain management. So, optimizing your inventory levels using some built-in intelligence to predict, what to replenish and when, so that you only purchase what you need. Being able to, avoid the lost sales and shortages, maintaining the right amount of inventory, by calculating stock levels and lead times and reorder points, suggesting substitute items if something's out of stock, and then, just getting recommendations on, when you can pay vendors so that you're taking advantage of a discount or avoiding penalties so that you can, maximize your profitability within your supply chain and just overall securing the supply chain as well. And from here, I had a couple of click-through examples that I was going to present, unless there's any questions just about general supply chain management within Business Central.
Is the data real time in regards to inventory and?
Yes, I mean as real as it's being updated, right?
Okay.
It's not a batch update process at 2 in the morning. It's real time during the day.
In terms of the actual inventory management, yeah, it would be, as you're going throughout there is a posting process for each thing that you do, or a register process, but that generally happens in line with you actually doing it.
Okay, so if I'm doing a cycle counting program and I make an adjustment at 11 a.m. in the morning, by noon, I'll see that reflected.
Yeah, and generally you would do that probably with some sort of like handheld solution or something along those lines.
Right.
But yeah.
Okay, I'm with you. Thanks.
So I've got these, again, these are PowerPoint click-through decks. They're intended to look like a live demo, but they're certainly not. So if you ask me a question about, hey, what does that button do? I won't be able to demonstrate it necessarily, but we could certainly try to talk towards it. The first scene is just sort of, a general check item availability scenario. So as far as, the solution, this is the Business Central homepage. And, you can see that there's a lot of different actions and these views of activities and these tiles that kind of surface relevant information for a given user in the system, and this is completely configurable. There are some out-of-the-box role centers, but you can create your own depending on any particular one user or a role of users within your organization. But you simply go to the items list, and you could have it as a traditional list of things, but you also have this view that can include pictures, which is kind of nice that you can upload pictures in the system and display that. But you also notice that it lists, the inventory quantities in this view as well. So, you see this Atlanta whiteboard base. This is one I'm going to pick on here for a little bit, but we have 10 pieces of that currently. So what I'm going to go through is sort of searching to see the availability of this item. And this search function is a global search across the entire system, which is really handy just for usage, but also for user adoption to help folks get used to using the system versus, well, I've got to click here and then there and then keep clicking through to find what I actually want. So we'll fake enter the order planning, and you can see I can go to that particular page, but also it surfaces some other information for this documentation section. So Microsoft has a very robust document repository of how to do things, setup and configuration, and all sorts of other details regarding to Business Central and the different modules. So again, trying to help with user adoption and for folks that may not be familiar with a certain area of the system, you can easily access that directly from within the software. We'll just go to the order planning worksheet. And this is essentially surfacing, a variety of things. So, we see that Atlanta whiteboard here. But what it's telling me is, I've got a needed quantity of 2. So, we're short of some customer demand, and we need to take action on that. So the first step here is just looking at the item availability. And you can look at that through a variety of lenses. But in this scenario, we're going to look at it by location. And although that this particular company isn't set up to have inventory in multiple locations, you can see that it is set up to be able to manage that if you do have multiple warehouses. But again, you can see here, there's 10 of those on hand. So we've got a negative balance. And this is more of just sort of a review aspect. So you can go back to this screen and actually just make an order for that item directly from here. Now, again, this is a scenario where I'm going to buy this whiteboard from a vendor, but if I was producing that whiteboard, then I could create a production order instead of a purchase order for that item. So we just hit OK, and you can see that the whiteboard is now gone from the list. So, navigating back to the purchase order screen, I can now see that I have a new purchase order created for the Graphic Design Institute, and I have those 2 whiteboards already listed here, and I could simply, post this and email to the vendor directly from this screen. So
what
again,
about
yes.
What about economic order quantities, setting a minimum order quantity, that type of stuff?
Yeah,
that's all supported.
Okay,
yeah.
All right.
And I think in the next, not this particular scene, but the next one, I believe it actually suggests some orders or additional items to order from a vendor based on past purchases and things like that. So there's some additional functionality beyond just minimum quantities.
Quick question, Jonathan. The walkthrough here, is that a, well, I'm not sure what my question is exactly, but is the soft platform offered as web-based and desktop? And if so, what are you showing? Looks like a lot like the O365, interface these days.
Yeah, it is browser based, and that is what you're seeing in this click through. But you can deploy it in an on-premises environment if a client wanted to host it on their hardware. That's absolutely an option. And you could obviously host it, in your own private cloud if you wanted to do that as well. I believe as far as the interface, it would be the same across all of those, Paul and Ann?
Yeah, as of the latest release, there used to be a legacy like thick Windows client that doesn't exist anymore. It's all web-based essentially. There's one other one that they call a quote unquote modern client that's just like a thin wrapper around it, but it's basically the website.
Okay.
Okay. And sort of my follow-up question to that is, I presume there's a pretty tight experience between O365 and Business Central. Does that all kind
Absolutely.
of flow, into itself nicely? I don't need to demonstrate it now. I'm just kind of looking for the quick answer.
Well, I'll give you the quick answer and then I'll demonstrate it for you here in a few minutes.
Okay.
If that works.
And one other question that came to mind as I'm watching you go through this, the classic question is, to what degree a system can be customized to match the business's state of affairs versus, how does a business need to change itself to work within the system? So to what degree is all the stuff that you're showing us customizable? I mean, can you add additional fields? Can you create different mappings? Or are you sort of like, hey, you have to work within the sort of the parameters that have been put in place as like a standard or default?
Sure. So it's pretty straightforward to add, tables, fields to existing tables, surface all of that information through web services, the rest of that stuff. So it's pretty extensible in that front. One of the things that is sort of changing or has been changed at this point is sort of how you would extend the business logic. Historically, which you probably, whoever it was that said that they'd been on an app implementation, you probably remember, you basically could just get right in the middle of the source code and just start adding custom code, which was great in terms of being able to do literally anything you wanted, but was terrible in terms of trying to do an actual upgrade. So they've redone all of that so that it's basically more of an event-driven way of implementing. So something will happen, right? Like an order will be about to be posted, and then it'll raise an event that says, anybody who wants to customize it, here's your moment to look at what's happened and change it before we commit everything. So you have a lot of those points where you can inject your own logic without blocking it from being able to upgrade.
Yeah. And so this kind of like reminds me of like Power BI and Power like workflows and such. Is that kind of the same notion? Like that's how someone at sort of the maybe in-house or the next technical level out from the client, as far as how they would like develop the system to suit the customer exactly, that's sort of the notion behind it.
Yeah, except for that it's not particularly like workflow driven. It's more, there's a custom programming language called AL specific to the platform, just so that your code can participate in transactions, that kind of stuff, right? That's hard to do with a workflow where you need to actually stop posting from happening, under certain circumstances, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But you certainly can also attach, workflows to it if you don't need that level of sort of built-in or low-level business logic.
All right, and then I forget, is there going to be something on BI as part of this? And
yes.
I'll be quiet.
Yep, and by all means, raise some questions when we get there. It's
Okay.
Shortly after some of these click-through presentations.
Thank you.
So just moving along into this sort of assemble to order demonstration. So, the scenario would be, I'm going to create a new sales order and we need to go then assemble that item for to fulfill the order. So simply create a new order, right? Identify who the customer is going to be, start entering the item that we're going to sell, which will be this conference package 1. So again, this is sort of this is assembly / kitting type of scenario versus a full production scenario. So enter the quantity in, and I automatically get this notification saying we don't have enough inventory to satisfy the customer demand. So it does give me the option if I want to move forward, which I do. And so it does add this, quantity to assemble to order. And if I click this ellipsis here, it actually shows me what that is. So I can see that that conference package includes, these 2 items and then an hour of resources time to put it together. So simply just close that out. And from here, I can navigate over to the assembly section. So again, using that global search function. And here you can see some additional things that have popped up, like reports that I could access. You still have that whole documentation section. I could just go to where the assembly orders list, or actually you can navigate to the order that is related to the sales order, which is kind of nice, right? It can direct you exactly where to go. So go to the assembly orders and open that up. Actually, I jumped ahead because what I was just supposed to do essentially there is just to say, hey, I can, once this assembly order is posted, that kit is now into inventory, so that I can go back to the sales order and complete and post that as well. So, a fairly simple process to be able to go through. You post that, and then you're back on your sales order to then post that order for your customer. Pretty simple scenario there. The last.
And is
yes.
this fully integratable with an EDI system or EDI order tracking?
Absolutely. We've got several customers that use EDI. So, yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. The last scene here was just some of the AI functionality that Microsoft has developed for Business Central. So being able to predict inventory needs. So back on the home screen of Business Central, we'll go to the item list. And in this fact box, you can actually now see, highlighting the Athens desk here, the sales forecast for this particular item. So I can look at different forecasts here and actually go and look at the inventory forecast so that I can compare against what I'm seeing on the sales side. And quickly I can see that after 2 months, based on the current demands, that we'll probably be short and need to create, a purchase order, purchase invoice to resupply that inventory item. So from within the same place, I can do that drop down again, create a purchase invoice, and I think I clicked twice. I did. So it adds the Athens desk with the predicted amount of quantity for that to fulfill the demand. But then you also see the ribbon at the top where it recommends that there's other items that we typically purchase from this vendor. It gives me the option that if I want to add these to the document to maybe save some money on shipping costs or something along those lines. So I can easily add those items. It populates it for me, and then I can simply, post and email to the vendor.
Is there a field for a buyer code? And then so the buyer can just log in and look at all their exceptions they got to work through?
I will have to defer to Paul and Ann on that one.
There is a buyer tie-in. I'm not sure that I quite follow the question though, in terms of what they're actually, what are you asking that how they're trying to do?
Like on the tier 1 systems, every item that you purchase will be linked to a particular buyer that buys that commodity or that item, right? So when you run your MRP at night, when they come in the morning, here's all their messages they got to answer as to what they got to buy.
Yeah, so there is an entire process like that. This is sort of a simpler buying process.
Okay,
But there is a whole worksheet for going through what you need to buy based on all of those levels that we were talking about earlier.
Forecast by item, et cetera,
right.
Different types of forecasts and all that stuff. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I believe it's the replenishment worksheet that I don't have included in this deck that Paul was referencing. So, so that wraps up, these short demo scenes. Again, the idea was just to try to give you guys a look and feel of the software, but also provide some talking points. So, just some high level benefits, right? Being able to improve your decision-making process, greater insight into the levels and demands, and being able to actually make sure that you have the inventory on hand to meet those demands, and then just better managing, your cash and your investments and things like that. So moving on into another section or functional area would be the reporting and analytics section.
Actually, just really quickly, just one thing I just wanted to point out, because we were kind of just talking about it just now. One of the things that I think actually is kind of nice about Business Central is that a lot of those processes have sort of various levels of complexity that they can be. especially around sort of like the warehousing process and that whole thing, right? So, if you're a very simple shop, you don't even have to have warehouses set up. You can just have inventory, items that you record, especially if you're going to do like software or something that you wouldn't have an actual location for anyway, all the way to, the much more complex like directed pick and put away. But you can sort of opt into those, and you can do those even differently at different warehouses. So you're not really, that helps it scale relatively well from, a somewhat simple implementation to a very complex implementation.
That's a good point. Thank you, Paul. So just have a single slide on this. Most companies, when they're reaching out to us, it's usually because their current software, has a lot of manual or paper-based processes, which, then causes a lack of visibility into how the organization is operating. So, process improvements are great, but you want to be able to sort of evaluate how those improvements are working, and reporting and analytics is obviously an area to do that through. So. Business Central has the ability to embed Power BI reports directly into the system. There's also AI-powered insights, which you can see here is this section, so that you can sort of surface anomalies or outliers, or just as the screen cap has here, saying that there's 10 customers that are late with their payments, and I could easily drill into that to see what those customers are and the actual invoices that are late. And then you're able to tailor this whole experience, which I mentioned earlier, as far as different roles for home screens to essentially enhance the user adoption, keep people focused on the activities that they need to be working on, the insights that are pertinent to their job, and so again, that's just additional configuration that could be done, and that's not like software coding or development. It's more WYSIWYG type of experience. Any questions on the reporting analytics? I've got another section that talks about Power BI specifically, and has some more examples on that.
I'm good. Keep going.
So the next area, sales management, and essentially purchasing is sort of almost the opposite of this, right? So as far as a lot of the functionality that I'll preach on here, but being able to prioritize your sales leads based on revenue potential, keeping track of all your customer interactions, similar to like activity management in a CRM system, getting guidance on upsells and cross sells and renewal opportunities, trying to improve or minimize the sales cycle. So delivering value at every single touch point that you have with a customer, but also being able to manage your campaigns, so you can see maybe how effective were the spring discounts that we were rolling out, but also getting a comprehensive view of the pipeline and potential revenue coming in through again CRM like active or functionality like opportunities and quotes, and then accelerating the quote to cash process by being able to respond to sales related inquiries directly from within Outlook. So you see a sort of a picture here, but I've got another demo scene that I'll show that actually shows that integration in Outlook and how it functions. Any question on sales management or anything to add from the LBMC team? Pretty straightforward stuff.
What is Microsoft CRM called these days? Is that it?
It's also Dynamics 365.
Okay, so that's all the same?
No, when I get back to that infinity loop, Joel, I'll talk a little bit about what those CRM applications are and their new names. So I've got that covered here in the deck here shortly.
Okay, great.
Let's see. The final area, I believe, is financial management. Again, fairly straightforward stuff, not rocket science. Most ERP systems do all the same stuff, but having connected data across accounting and sales and purchasing, and being able to get or streamlining your AR and your AP processes to automatically reconcile accounts so you can close your financials more quickly, and then having more insights or maybe more refined financial forecasts by modeling and analyzing the data across dimensions. So Business Central, as far as a chart of accounts, uses the natural account only, and then you use the dimensions to slice and dice your data more granularly, such as like a location or a department or some other category of data. Being able to, essentially be able to track all that information here and have better, analytics and view into the pulse of the business. Again, this is all fairly common stuff. So I don't know if there's any questions on this part.
We're not accountants, so.
We've only got one of those on the line, and he confessed that he's not actively working in that space. Perfect. So going back to our infinity loop, I wanted to go sort of around the horn here and touch on all those ancillary technologies that we've had some questions about. So the Office 365 integration is very robust. Joel, you alluded to that earlier. So it actually, the Dynamics 365 solutions, and that's ERP and CRM, all get deployed within that same Office tenant for a customer. So they get a single sign-on experience for all of these different applications. It's all in one place. And you can see Power BI is also located in here as well. For a quick demo scene of the Outlook integration, this is going to be on the AP side and working with the vendor invoice that comes in. So in this scenario, I've received a purchase invoice from a vendor. They've sent it to me via email. And, in most environments, I would need to go open another application, log in, search for the vendor, begin creating that purchase invoice manually. Or maybe I just forward this on to somebody that has, back office access and then let them take care of the process for me. But regardless, it's very inefficient and often causes, data issues as far as accuracy. So directly within, Outlook, I have this Business Central plugin, which I can click and it starts to bring back some information based off of the email address of the sender. So it knows that it's associated with this vendor record in Business Central and gives me some high-level information about them. And directly from here, I can go ahead and create new documents. So I can create a new purchase invoice or order, or credit memo. But in this scenario, we'll do a purchase invoice. Now, this suggested line items is actually pretty nifty because Business Central is basically scanning the email and recognizing all of the data and the text in the body of the email and starts to populate this information. So you see that this actually came from the Atlanta office of Worldwide Importers, and we have the Atlanta whiteboard. So it did suggest this as an item. Hey, do you want to add that to your list? And you can toggle these on and off depending on what you actually are trying to enter in that purchase invoice. But essentially, it goes ahead and fills that data out for you, including the quantities that they've listed. You could scroll down and see some more information on this particular purchase invoice, add more details if I need. But if I'm all done, I can simply just go to the ellipsis here and post this document. And it automatically posts that into the Business Central application for you. So, you're not having to switch applications. You're not having to manually key data in. It's doing a lot of that heavy lifting without you having to leave, that place that all of us work anyways, which is Outlook.
So when you make your sales pitch, what are your top three bullet points on the sales pitch? Is this one of it? The fact that you're so tightly integrated to Office 365?
That is certainly up there. It's, no other vendor can really say that they do what Microsoft can do as far as the business applications and productivity applications being integrated together.
Right.
You've got the Outlook integration, but then also, integration with Excel. So being able to dump data sets out to Excel, and then actually being able to even make edits within Excel and publish it back into the ERP system. So again, this is like a list of sales orders that maybe I was working on, and instead of having to open up each individual sales order and update information, I can do that en masse right here in Outlook, right here in Excel, and publish that back into Business Central.
Kevin, this would have saved us days last year.
There you go.
Yeah,
it's a good question. So some of those things that you mentioned. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Same thing, Chris. Absolutely thinking the same thing.
Well, plus the training curve is so much so much faster, right? Because they know everybody knows how to use Outlook, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
You nailed
okay.
it.
Yep. Okay.
Increasing productivity, reducing some of the manual processes, editing data en masse, all that stuff. Obviously, huge benefits that Microsoft is able to provide, specifically with their tight integration between these different systems.
Okay.
The next area to cover is sort of the Power Platform section. Power Apps is sort of a build your own line of business application solution that uses the Common Data Service, which is standardized database structure, and actually the same platform that the CRM apps are built on.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so Power Apps is, it's intended to be a citizen developer type of tool. You don't need to know how to code or be a software. You don't have to be Paul to write your own Power App. Somebody like myself that has none of those technical abilities can go in there and create applications. And then Power Automate used to be called Microsoft Flow, if you're familiar with that. But it's essentially a cross-application workflow tool. You could build out to say if something happens in this system, then something else needs to happen in this other system scenarios. And then Microsoft has actually just added robotic process automation capabilities, which if you think about building like an Excel macro, this is kind of a similar type of function.
Mm-hmm.
But being able to now work with on-premises systems where the traditional Microsoft Flow solution really only worked well with cloud-based applications. So now opening this up.
Specifically, it's for ones that don't have any sort of API, right? So like if you're just like going to a green screen and keying things in.
Right.
Did you have a lot of people actually use workflow?
In what? I mean.
You mean
yes.
the Microsoft Flow?
Yeah, I mean, Microsoft Flow or whatever.
I mean, I think to some degree it probably depends on the context. Do you mean like within Business Central specifically?
I was just general question about how well it was adapted. It was always the little symbol on the Office 365 screen, and I always go like, "What the hell's that?" And I'd look it up and I go, I don't know if I'm going to use that, right? Power BI I get, right? I've done Power BI, and
sure.
We built data models and helped slice and dice the businesses, but I think my son uses it, but.
I would say probably in and of itself, I think a lot of people probably see it as kind of being a little bit of a, it's hard to sort of figure out what the use case is.
Okay. Right.
But they are positioning that as essentially the business logic component of the entire Power Platform. It's becoming sort of the first class workflow engine for all of the CRM apps. And I suspect that will be even more. I mean, that will be true for Business Central as well. And so, I mean, there's all kinds of examples using Flow. They also use it with, like their like bot framework, to use a Flow to take somebody's order and enter it in another system, that kind of stuff. So I think there's a lot of possibility there.
Yeah, Chris, in my mind, this whole power set is like a top 3 bullet point. Mac.
Oh, I agree.
From a
pretty. What you can do from a dashboard standpoint and being able to slice and dice down into the businesses. It's really the whole reason I would buy it or recommend it, right?
Yeah. It requires that the client be keen on digging into that sort of stuff. I think it's incumbent on the user to make it work best for them and take advantage of it.
Yeah, you need a CFO that's under 50 years old. That wants
it's a very similar pitch as to why you'd want to use DriveWorks as well.
Yeah.
Right. It's the same idea of taking something that's been done manually and automating it.
Exactly.
The same reason you do it for SolidWorks is the same reason you do it for anything else in the business.
Yeah, I'm with you.
There's a lot of potential there, and folks, the masses just haven't quite. They're kind of like you. They're sort of scratching their head, figuring out, well, I don't know, maybe tomorrow I'll press that button and figure it out. But I think there's a future there for sure.
Oh yeah, I'm with you. Yep.
Yeah. So, Power BI has been mentioned quite a bit. Actually, that's part of the Power Platform, but I do have just sort of a small demo scene regarding, working with the reports and dashboards, drilling through to underlying data, and then also being able to easily create, a shareholder's financial package type of thing. So,
well, here's
back in. Oh.
Sorry for interrupting, but so the reason I'm so keen on this, okay, is from my experience from running businesses, if I develop the right operational metrics and the right KPIs, okay, and the team is driving and doing well with those, then at the end of the month, and we do the P&L, we know we made money, okay? It should not be a surprise whether I made money or lost money, right? If those things are well integrated and well developed. And it takes some time to do it, right? And that's why the Power BI tool and just being able to download the stuff to Excel, build your pivot tables, and slice and dice away is very, very, very powerful. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and why wait till the end of the month? Like you're saying, you can get that insights any day, anytime. So
yeah, I agree.
So quickly in this scenario, it's within Business Central, but easily accessing these other applications such as Power BI, and then immediately toggling over to that system. So this is just sort of a sample homepage. It's got a lot of different recent things that I've done, favorites. We can simply go look at a report and dashboard, and what's nice is all this data is integrated. So if I select, the in progress section by this count by status, it starts to reflect those in the other elements, as far as, what I may be clicking on.
Mm-hmm.
And then, being able to use something called Quick Insights, which is a component of Power BI to provide just additional insights like trends or forecasts. The Insights feature, it's used to sort of search across subsets of data and then provide potentially interesting type of insights. So here's just the different cards that would show. So you've got sort of these outliers that it's noticing or various trends that are going on. So again, the idea is to surface this data to the user versus them having to go and find it or cobble reports together to try to find this data. And then the example of creating sort of a stakeholder financial packet. So this is just sort of a favorite section. I've got this dashboard that I then want to take and export that into a PowerPoint presentation. Maybe I'm going to go and get in front of a board or something like that. So I can easily take that, immediately go into my PowerPoint deck and be clicking through. And what's cool is that I jumped ahead. What's cool is that this is still integrated to all that data in Power BI. So if I'm in that meeting and somebody says, well, what's the total revenue made up of, right? You can actually drill into that and then go back into Power BI, and I can start to see what those numbers consist of, and then even drill in further to see, the various quarters within those years. So you guys are very familiar with Power BI. Obviously, it's quite a robust tool, but still has a lot of integrations, not just with ERP, but some of those other productivity type of applications as well. So some obvious benefits of using Power BI.
So Jonathan, I don't want to get off track, but I want to ask a question, and I don't want to fumble how I ask it to you guys, but a lot of times what we uncover, we're going into businesses that are stressed and or they've got some certain performance issues. They either need a refresh, they need some triage, etc. And maybe they're in QuickBooks, maybe they're in a fledgling ERP, MRP environment that they're totally underutilizing or not utilizing correctly. And maybe the recommendation ends up being we need to blow that up and bring something else that will really help better suit the needs of your business. One critical area that we seem to get involved in a lot, and I've been involved in this multiple times over the course of my career. Chris and I saw it when we were up on the last project, and that is that the businesses we have helped, not in all cases, but in many cases, have customized products. They have products that need to go through, obviously, an MRP process, and they need to be built. They're not, let's pull a whiteboard off the shelf out of inventory and ship it. It's very much the anti-Amazon model. It's, we've got to build something, and we've got to do it by making sure that we've got 8 different components of materials, making sure we've got them in the right quantities, bringing them together on the shop floor, and then making sure that we can put all of that together in a schedule, an operational schedule, to be able to meet what sales and or customer service have committed to the customer relative to delivery, et cetera, et cetera. How does this system, how do the pieces and parts interface so that the quoting process is one that there's transparency and that sales or customer service are not making commitments that the business can't keep? And then how does the system keep track of it all? You know, what aspects of this particular Microsoft capability set allow a business to do that? And if the question isn't apropos to this presentation, we can
No,
take
it's not. No, I think it's a really good question, and I'll piggyback on it. So, you know, so I'm assuming you can do multi-level bills. Can you do a primary and secondary routing through the work centers? And then on the distribution side, what type of picking functions do you have, you know, for picking orders? And this may be kind of too nitty gritty, but those are the questions we're going to get asked, right? I mean, can you wave pick? You know, that type of stuff.
So I'll probably look at Ann and maybe Paul to address those initially, at least.
Well, there was a lot to that question, but I think
Sorry about that.
True. Sorry about that.
no, it's okay. It's important. You can have a primary and secondary routing. I tried to jot down the other parts to the question, so please fill in the gaps where I don't have them.
Multi-level bills.
Yes.
Well, yes, you can have
Okay.
multi-level bills. You asked something about picking. Was it wave picking?
Yep. Yep.
I do not know the answer to that. I can find out, but
Okay.
I don't know if you do, Paul.
No, I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, we can find that out. But
I'm sure somebody makes an add-on application that layers on top for doing type of stuff like that. So
all of those things that you mentioned, you know, being able for all those parties that have to be part of making up a quote and knowing that you have those components available or what it's going to take to build that finished good that you're selling. All of those pieces exist. So all those roles, all those users that would need to be part of that, they all have those tools available to them to, you know, to help produce a quote that is accurate and identifies what is actually going to make up that finished good.
okay.
And then as far as the nitty gritty question on the wave picking, let us get back to you on that.
Okay, good, because that kind of dovetails into how you do your warehouse management system functions.
Oh, so
Okay.
Sorry. I don't always get involved in the terminology. I didn't know what wave picking meant. I just looked it up. It does do that.
Okay.
Where you can sort of like pick from multiple things at the same time, and it can have some level of logic of how you'd go through those so that you do it efficiently.
Yep. Okay, that's good.
And sorry, but to get back maybe to the front part of that convoluted question, apologies for that. A salesperson out in the field who is quoting a customer, or a sales and customer service team that is putting a quote together, how do they utilize the system to ensure that they're putting out accurate information?
Well, I would say that this is, you know, it's a cloud-based solution, so it's accessible through a browser, but there's also a mobile application for it as well. So assuming you have internet access, you know, you could collaborate with these folks across locations, you know, within the system, or, you know, using something like Teams and this, and there's a lot of ways to go about that, right? But I think that's the beauty of these cloud applications is is it really increases the collaboration within companies across departments.
So is this,
Are you asking about the design process or about like literally just the quoting process?
What he's getting into is controlling the workflow with certain permissions, so that your sales rep or your salesperson cannot quote a product that does not exist and does not meet a certain gross margin requirement. Am I catching that correct, Kevin?
that's a part of it, Chris.
Yeah.
And I guess what I'm hearing through the various bits and pieces of answers, and I appreciate the question, is I said going in, it was going to be a confusing question, but I have seen time and time and time again where there's a disconnect between what's going on out in the factory or the warehouse, for that matter, or even in the procurement office, versus what a salesperson or customer service person who is on the front line, who's talking to that customer and needing to give a date. Here is when we will have this product ready to be able to ship. How does this system link together MRP, ERP, CRM, so that the information that's being discussed with the client is, and or orders that are coming in EDI and need to be confirmed, that real-time information is being used and it's accurate to be able to quote the right dates and make sure that that we're transacting correctly so that we're not disappointing the client. And I guess what I'm seeing here is it's in the cloud, and as I look at all of these features and the interconnecting functional areas, I'm assuming we just have to write this into the interconnects on the programs and on the functionality. Maybe I'm oversimplifying that.
Well, I think to some degree it probably depends on the exact processes for all of those things, because I mean ultimately a lot of that stuff could in theory all happen within Business Central itself directly. We're not necessarily even having to tie into some, but to your point, you could push some of that information into other systems if that made sense. But I mean, in terms of, just the general design process, right? I mean, there's the whole concept of, having this sort of bill of materials and having, draft status and approval status, and you can prevent, things from moving forward from a certain point, right? So a lot of that, I think, unless I'm oversimplifying, it can be handled directly in that one area in the middle.
So the rep could be with the customer, have their iPad with them, have the Business Central app up, enter a sales order, and get a date back, all in real time. Would that be correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I think the accuracy of what that tablet will show the rep is based on a lot of factors that are within the company's control, not necessarily the software. So,
true. Very true.
Has product been received? Has shipments been booked? Has production orders been marked as complete? Is the WIP accurate? Of course, is inventory itself accurate? That's Microsoft can't control that. So, I mean, how good is the business at running itself? But then I think what we haven't seen is, we saw a short snippet of kind of how to apply a layer of like demand planning.
There you go.
Of all of this.
Yeah, I think all three of us would ask questions about how do you set up the demand planning? How do you set up the scheduling of work orders, that type of stuff? How do I schedule a work center? Okay.
But I think the short answer is that the data is accurate real time. Well, so long as the business has been entering the data real time. Right. But there's no like inherent lag within the Microsoft suite that would hinder that process.
Right. No, and actually, if anything, there's not a lot of Business Central actually has fewer sort of batch processes than a lot of other things. There's a lot of expectation that you're going to post things as you're getting it done. There's like not a batch for you to go post. You know what I mean? Like you kind of have to post the transaction.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good points. This next area was actually, I went ahead and transitioned to it as you were talking about some of the warehouse management stuff. So AppSource is Microsoft's area. It's basically like an enterprise app store, enterprise software app store, but it's for all of those needs that are outside of the core functionality of Business Central, where you may not want to, customize or create your own extension. You can go find something that somebody else has already created and has listed out here. So you can find things directly from within Business Central. We're using that search function, right? If I was looking for barcoding and I didn't have that today, it would recommend solutions. But there's things for credit card processing or e-commerce, EDI, more robust warehouse management solutions. I'm glad that Paul verified that the wave picking is a function that's core, but there are a lot of add-on products that can extend the functionality as well. So that was the point of highlighting this section. And the last area of the sort of this infinity loop was this Azure section. So you've got the Internet of Things component. So if you've got devices that you can capture data from and actually feed that into Azure, and then maybe if you're for example, an elevator repair business, right, and you're monitoring the power supply of an elevator at a client site and it's overheating, you notice that, you could do preventative maintenance type of dispatching versus a break fix issue that's obviously much larger. And then the artificial intelligence component is something that Microsoft is spending a lot of money on these days, and they actually have 5 free extensions available for AI for Business Central. We've already looked at the sales and inventory forecast, but there's other things for like this image analyzer, so that you upload a picture of a new item, and it's actually going to recommend attributes for that item. So it can recognize that it's not just a table, but it's an indoor table and a piece of furniture, as you would classify that in the system. There's also this late payment predictor, right? So you could, if you have customers that are often late making their payments, you can actually pop this notification up to a sales rep, maybe out in the field creating a quote for a customer, and says, hey, these people never pay on time. Do you want to move forward with an order for them? We looked at that sales and inventory forecast extension. There's a very similar one for cash flow. So again, these are just free extensions that Microsoft has created and deployed that you can use with Business Central today. So that's all some pretty cool stuff. I don't know if there's any questions on the AI stuff. I was kind of cruising through that pretty quickly.
No, that's good stuff, though.
Actually, I lied. That wasn't the last piece of this. The other thing I wanted to cover was those CRM applications. So the current name is customer engagement. So instead of calling it, customer relationship management, they call it customer engagement, but it's the same, similar type of CRM applications for sales, managing accounts and contacts and leads and opportunities. If you have sales goals, you're selling products, you need to have, quoting and orders and invoicing. It's all, part of that application. Customer service, mainly for case management, but there's also tools for knowledge-based management and service contracts and SLAs. There's an omni-channel experience. So if you're dealing with, customers that are submitting, cases via email, phone, a website portal, or some social platform, SMS, text messaging, it's all available through that omni-channel solution. I mentioned that the service module in Business Central is more geared towards, in-house service, but there is this application that is explicitly for, out in the field work. And it's, everything you would expect to have for, work order management solution, being able to dispatch field resources. You can do route optimization. There's also like geofencing capabilities that you could, potentially push a notification to a customer saying that the technician is close to your location. And the field service app is also very closely integrated with the Azure IoT functionality for a lot of those, repair and maintenance needs. And then there's a full-blown marketing automation solution as well as part of this whole suite of applications. So you can do, email marketing, multi-channel campaigns. You can actually build, full customer journeys, which are sort of those tree branching out to different routes based on a customer's interaction with your marketing collateral. If they're clicking on things, they're going to go this route. They didn't click on anything, we're going to send them this information. Those kind of customer journeys. And then the final application of this suite is probably the one that has the least certain roadmap. It's probably going to be combined with the Microsoft Project solution, which you guys may be familiar with. But this project service automation is more of a white collar project management solution. It's good for task and resource management and time capture, being able to do Gantt charts. And then presumably when it gets combined with the Microsoft Projects application, will be more robust for the functionality that it offers, but I believe it'll still be part of this Dynamics 365 customer engagement suite as well. So these were some of those things that I think, Joel, you had asked about as far as what are those today. So these are separate applications from Business Central, providing more functionality than just what the core relationship management module in Business Central offers. But they are obviously all integrated with Business Central as well. So, as an example, if you're using the sales app and you've won a quote and you want to convert that into an order in the ERP, that's actually core functionality. And then we have the abilities to extend that integration to, map custom entities or anything beyond just what the core integration provides.
And so all the red icons here are separately purchased or like a modular and can be added on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Cruising along, the next thing I had on the agenda was a technical discussion, which we've kind of been covering throughout. So I'm just going to skip this slide unless there's something that somebody has at the moment.
I'm good if everybody else is good.
Good.
Perfect. So now I wanted to come back to some, engagement examples, things that we've done in the past, and then also provide some, rough estimate, ballpark pricing type of examples for our services as well. Before I jumped.
Sorry
yes.
to interrupt. I did have one more technical question.
Go for it.
Do you have any comment from the group or from your firm about anything to do with like factory floor production systems, MES, or establishing any other sort of feedback loop as far as tracking productivity of people and equipment and such? I didn't see anything relevant, but are you aware of interacting in that space?
Things like labor hours per widget or widgets per machine hour or things like that.
Logging quality control, logging machine uptime, all sorts of stuff that would be real nice to have a dashboard on in a factory management office using, Power BI or something. And it's sort of tangentially related as far as what Business Central does, but it's relevant to that environment. So that question may not have an answer, but just want to know if that's something the group is familiar with or not.
Yeah, then that jogged another question in my mind. So how do you interface into the company's time and attendance system, like Kronos or ADP? For doing payroll, for paying the employees.
So I'll let Ann probably tackle the first part. The second part, there's kind of a number of answers, kind of depending on what exactly. There's not really an out-of-the-box thing from Kronos or something like that, but you certainly can integrate it. I'm actually working on integration right now with that same jobs company. Push all their jobs to Kronos and then pull the time detail back from Kronos. Yeah, I don't know what you want to add to that, Ann.
Does the employee scan the job and then scan hours?
I'm not actually 100% sure on their Kronos side, but yeah, they are choosing jobs for sure.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, as far as the first part of the question, which I think was kind of like an example someone threw out was, widgets per work center, and those types of metrics and having a dashboard for those. That often comes into play with customers when we're talking about manufacturing, and those types of things can be included in the configuration and the analytics that we can get out of the system. I think your question was, are you familiar with those types of things? And yes, that is very often part of the implementation for customers that are doing full-blown manufacturing.
Okay.
Do we address all those questions, Joel and Chris?
Yeah, mine are good.
Yeah, I think the answer to my question is a matter of probably falls like within that Power BI area, and the Business Central doesn't necessarily have its own need for that type of information. It's more just consolidating that.
Well, let me ask his question in a different way. So I've got a manufactured part, it has a routing, and let's say the routing is step 10, step 20, step 30, step 40 as it goes through various work centers. And there's labor applied to each of the particular routing steps. I can pull all that granularity back into Power BI, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So Joel, that's how you get your productivity measurement is the routing completion steps.
So Business Central will create the information and deploy it to the factory in some fashion, using a production order or similar. What I'm thinking about, and this is what we talked about the other day, is how you then close the loop and get the feedback back to get your operational metrics. How do you receive data back to see how things are going? In the way that you would in a financial sense, but this is more purely operational.
I mean, from the one we just did, every time you closed the work order, all that labor and if you had any scrap was always posted within the system. Then you just had to go in and pull the data out into a table and then massage it to make it look pretty, right? Right, but then if you want to start asking questions about why, then you have to basically walk out to the factory floor and Yeah, that's where I think your MES layer, would layer down below this and ask some of the process questions, right? Right. Or quality question. I mean, that's why why we still have an MES layer, even though we have all these systems, right? Right. So, I think it's at that point, it's just a matter of integration, if applicable, and then using Power BI to create the dashboard. Yep, I agree.
Yeah, and it's worth stating that Power BI you can connect that to multiple data sources. So, it doesn't just have to be Business Central feeding it data. It can come from an MES system or a variety of other things that you can then combine all of those data components into, one report or one dashboard or a variety of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Joel, what I did before with Power BI is I had a labor data table and I had a production, widget production data table. And I used those two and just calculated the math to look at productivity, hours per SKU or, how many SKUs per labor hour, all that type of stuff. So it's not that hard to do it in Power BI.
Yeah, and again, with there's so much capability on the Power BI side. I mean, theoretically, you could even tie that into IoT, right? And pull information back if you have internet-connected machines.
Right. So
why are we having some sort of issue with this one? It's always running hot. That might be part of it, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's Joel's expertise in that particular layer right there.
But I guess the answer I'm looking for is that an MES system still has its place.
Oh yeah.
And it's just purely an integration of some sort, just to create blended dashboards that.
Yeah, it doesn't have anything sort of like directly to really facilitate capturing all that low-level detail information, right? Of how long did you actually spend on this machine?
But if I had an IoT device that was capturing temperatures or pressures or whatever, I can access that and bring it in, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, does Microsoft have an IoT gateway or other, hardware that kind of brings that together, or are you still relying on another system to produce the underlying data?
I thought I
mean,
saw on
the
your
devices have to produce the data. Is that what I'm not sure what you're.
I thought your Infinity Loop had a
yeah, there's an IoT hub, which is
Yeah.
basically for coordinating all of those IoT signals. But obviously, the signals still have to come from the individual devices.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
But you have an IoT gateway that'll interface into Business Central.
I wouldn't say that the integration to Business Central is tight and exists. I'm not entirely sure what the use case would be there. It'd be more for analytics. The real tie-in in terms of the Dynamics platform for IoT, primarily of sort of out of the box action, is like auto generating work orders for field service.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Good. Okay. So next section was, again, just sort of talking about some additional projects that we've worked on. Before discussing that, I thought it would be applicable to talk a little bit about our implementation methodology, just to give you sort of a background on how we approach projects. There's a lot of words on this slide. Again, I'm going to send this to you, but at a high level, we follow an agile methodology for these projects. We've learned that it's challenging to uncover all the details up front, which means, things are changing, new requirements are coming up. So waterfall approach doesn't always work that well. But, we typically do start with an analysis and design activities, where we build the initial backlog of user stories, which are then, further broken down into discrete tasks to complete. And then we do sprint planning meetings where we come to an agreement of what tasks are we going to do during this given sprint. We typically do 1 month periods, but we also can do week or 2 week sprints depending on the project or capacity or things like that. And then as we go through implementations, we just hold Scrum meetings and other meetings to move items to done. On the next slide, I have a sample project timeline, and I'll talk a little bit about our concept of like a minimal viable product and continuous improvement. But essentially our goal is to get software in our clients' hands early and often, give them the opportunity to be learning the system, testing the processes, ensuring correctness. That way when we get to that go live moment, things are a lot smoother for that transition. I'm sure you guys are familiar with agile methodology. I don't know if you have any specific questions on how we handle our project implementation methodology.
Yeah, my youngest son works for Cisco, so he filled me in on the whole deal. So.
Okay. So this is, again, just a sample of a timeline. Not every project is the same, so this varies depending on the engagement itself. But every project is going to have somebody like Ann managing it, and we go through those initial phases, and then going through the actual setup and configuration and interfacing and customization. Whatever the heavy lifting is in that light blue colored area. Eventually getting to the the more full blown UAT end-to-end testing. Preparing the final data for cutover to go live. And so that, initial go live is, again, sort of what we call the minimal viable product. So something that we work with the client to identify, what's the least amount of setup that you could actually start getting value from this system. Let's get to that point and then sort of go into this continuous improvement loop where, we're adding more functionality or creating more reports or views or dashboards or whatever it is to, again, just sort of improve upon the initial go live. And do you have anything to add on this stuff?
How do you handle go live support?
Well, it's really part of that continuous improvement. So let's say you went live, as Jonathan said, with the minimum viable product. All of the pieces that you needed to run your business were in play, but there were some other pieces that were still being developed. So go live support would be just coupled in with the continuous improvement. Now, if you went live when everything was done and all the functionality was in place, then the implementation team would continue to provide support until the client felt like they were stable and able to handle things on their own. Did that answer what you were looking for? Maybe there was something more specific you were asking.
No, that's satisfactory. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So the next slide talks a little bit about some specific types of engagement. So to kind of level set, I put one on here, just, core financial management. Typically companies that are outgrowing, QuickBooks or some other legacy system is because it's not sufficient to handle their growth, around multi-accounting, I call it. So multi-entity, multi-location, multi-currency. So for an example, I've got a client that they own and manage the books for a variety of companies like restaurants and property management for residential and commercial, like self-storage locations. Then they have their main business, which they're actually selling leads to insurance companies. So they've got, a lot of consolidated financial requirements, intercompany transactions. But again, it's more just core financials. But to try to give a sort of a ballpark on what those typically look like as far as the number of hours that we would work and a cost associated with it. And then for a distribution company, right? So these projects are definitely going to vary. Paul mentioned earlier that there's sort of these various layers of supply chain management, and if you're just drop shipping items, your implementation is going to be a lot smaller than if you have more sophisticated supply chain management needs and warehouse management requirements like multiple warehouses or barcoding and handheld devices, smart pick and put away, or maybe you have international shipments, right, that are coming from overseas, or dealing with integrations with other systems like EDI or e-commerce. Actually, I have a client of mine that really has all of these components. They are a clean room garment distributor. Technically, they subcontract their manufacturing to a company in El Salvador, and then they actually have a Gerber PLM system that they create the custom labels for their clients. So they'll receive those jumpsuits or other garments from El Salvador, and then they'll add those labels and patches that are being fed from that PLM system. So integrations with other systems, sophisticated needs, those are sort of the ballparks that we typically see people falling into as far as the number of hours and typical cost for the services.
Okay.
And then on the manufacturing side, again, those are typically larger projects because you're setting up more things. And we talked a little bit earlier that even the manufacturing can be sort of scaled between, just assemblies or kitting to full MRP. So, you're looking at definitely a couple thousand hours to be able to implement these types of systems, especially considering that there is oftentimes integrations with other systems, like we've already mentioned. And I was actually recalling when I was putting on this deck together that Chris, you had mentioned like a custom door manufacturer as an example of a client that you guys would work with. And we're actually working with a company that makes windows and doors, and we're going to be interfacing with a CAD type of system that they use to engineer these custom windows and doors. And they actually have several other systems that we need to integrate with because of their sort of unique business processes. So, that's
give us a call. We know all about it.
Absolutely.
Joel and I have lived it. So.
Perfect. Well, so again, this slide was intended to sort of give those examples of the typical ballparks that we're in when we're working with clients in these sort of different areas and what they may need. I don't know if there's any specific questions about these engagements.
Like the JD Edwards one we were on was what was it, about 3.5 million, Kevin?
Yes, sir. It was all of that.
Yeah. So I was figuring you guys were someplace between 250 and 500,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as a ballpark when I was guessing. So,
is there a question? Is there a preferred handheld system? I mean, ScanForce or something along those lines that this system likes to interface with?
I mean, I guess I would say that there's definitely, independent software vendors that have written systems specifically to work with Business Central. So there could be advantages to that, but I would also say that we're probably capable of working with just about anything. And I may be speaking too soon for Paul and Ann's liking, but that would be my thought.
That's true. We've had good success with a company called InsightWorks. They were actually, ironically, that was one of their products. It was, or a couple of their products that was in that screenshot from AppSource that Jonathan had earlier.
Correct. Good catch, Paul.
Thanks.
2,000 hours. That's a lot of hours. Who's doing that? How is that all within your team? And how many people would be on a project? And what kind of schedule does 2,000 hours fit within?
The 2,000-hour project would typically be 4 people. I'm kind of just thinking this out loud at the moment, but so you'd have a project manager, at least 1 developer, and a lead architect, and another implementation consultant, potentially a 5th person, another implementation consultant as well. It depends on the types of other systems that you're integrating with.
That's pretty typical from what we're used to. Yeah.
Okay. As far as is the timeline for that, for a 2,000-hour project for a manufacturing company, it would typically take somewhere between 12 to 16 months to implement all the functionality. If they wanted to go live with that minimum viable product like we talked about that didn't include everything and wanted to add some pieces in as a later phase, then that could be shortened.
Mm-hmm.
So 100 days was a fast track.
I was impressed when you guys said that to me last week.
Well, that's because we didn't let the customer make any decisions. So it goes much faster that way.
I mean,
that does
that's actually that is a fair point to make, though, Chris, right? Because I mean, in a lot of scenarios, there's not necessarily an organization like yours in there helping the customer make these decisions or whiteboard these processes. So we can oftentimes only work as fast as the customer can, because they are obviously integral in the process and moving it forward. They can only do so much as well as their actual jobs, right? So
yeah, and I think that brings up that's probably where there's a lot of synergy, right? Is I mean, you're still going to bill your 2,000 hours and the $430,000, but I think we could help cut through a lot of we could just make it go faster, help it go faster, right? I mean, because 2,000 hours is still, just one person's work hours for a year, right? So,
right.
Yeah, so you guys could actually you could sell more clients per year and make more revenue per year. Does that make sense?
You're making Brian happy with those kind of comments.
Yep.
Yep. Listen to that all day.
Any other comments or questions about these engagement examples?
No, very good. No, you guys have done a great job. Thank you very much. Excellent.
And I promise we're almost done. I know I've gone well past the hour that I had asked for. One thing I did want to just reiterate to something I said on a previous call, that a partnership like we could have with BMA is similar to partnerships we have with other firms. I called out that Springboard Consulting firm, that they really focus on the sales and marketing department, but providing similar services as you guys do. But then also we have relationships with SHI and CDW, where they're calling on us to be the integrator, the software implementer, and so again, just wanted to highlight that for you folks. Any questions on that?
No, we had a very good discussion with Evan, and actually I got hooked up with one of his other partners too. So
well, there you go.
So we've already. When we talked to him, was it this week or last week?
This week.
This week. That's
Well, awesome.
Thursday already. Yeah,
I know, right?
all the days are blending together. Yep.
Yeah.
When you're staying at home all the time, it's hard to keep them straight.
Yeah.
Evan's good people. I'm glad you could connect with him.
Nice guy, real nice guy.
All right, last section here. So again, we wanted to talk a little bit about who we are beyond just ERP and CRM. So just sort of a story of LBMC. So the LBMC Technology Solutions company that we're all part of is just one of the family of companies for LBMC, which the largest one is the accounting firm, which is actually a top 50 national firm. We've been doing this for a while. We've got a lot of clients across the world. We don't just work with Microsoft Dynamics. We do work with some other systems like Sage Intacct, Salesforce. We do provide some support for that. We also have, managed IT solutions and network engineering around, Office 365,
Okay.
and other just typical managed IT services. And we also have a cybersecurity division that helps with information security. We work with OnBase, which is a document management solution, and also has a lot of powerful, sort of workflow type of functionality. And then we also work with Digium phone systems. So,
Okay.
so yeah, again, just we can help customers beyond just their ERP and CRM software needs. We're sort of a larger technology partner that can cover a lot more ground. And this next slide just sort of shows those other companies and provides some additional information on what they do. I'll probably look to Brian to fill in anything that I may have missed out that would be valuable to add as far as what else we do beyond ERP and CRM.
Let me ask you a question. So Kevin and I have been working on a little document that we're going to send out to our clients about, given the fact that the world's changed in the last 30 days, and a lot of guys and gals are having to figure out whether do they still have a business, two, how much is it going to crash, or three, my demand is now 2 or 3 times what it normally is, right? And then we have examples of all those. We're trying to set up a little 2 or 3 week engagement for lack of a better term, it's a triage assessment where we sit down with the business owner, and we're looking to be honest, we're looking for an accounting partner to do the accounting side of it. Kevin and I will do all the other functional aspects of the business. How do they go to market? The sales, the customer bases, all that type of stuff. We're very fine with digging through all that, but we're trying to come up with something that's a quick hit, that's at a moderate cost, where we can help the business owners make sure that they're getting their business. We call it rethink and reset for the new environment. Okay, and the catchphrase is, let's help you survive so you can later thrive. Okay, out in the world, because right now it's all about cash, not running out of cash, and being there for 2021, right? Does that ring? Does that resonate with you guys at all?
Yeah, I would say it definitely does. Our CPA firm, which we're not part of at all, but we spawned out of the firm over 20 years ago into a separate LLC. They're doing a ton of work on that too, because they've got 5,000 clients or more, and everybody's impacted, and so they've been real progressive about trying to get out in front of it and get people ready for when this craziness ends. And have had some webinars already, and they've got a lot of partner relationships with folks like you that they work with, and so I think there's something to be maybe looked at there.
Okay, yeah, because all the partners have got extensive restructuring and turnaround experience.
Yeah,
and that's all I've done for the last 30 years is go fix businesses.
Okay.
So,
yeah, that's a fun business, and you're not going to be retired anytime soon from the looks of the economy. So.
Oh no. Kevin, you want to add something to that?
No, only the fact that I said it when we started out this meeting, and really, Jonathan and you guys, the whole team, appreciate what you presented and the discussion and a chance for us to wrap our head around this in a more substantive way. I'm glad Joel was on the call. So that said, while we are engaging with a number of different firms to help address strategy issues and turnaround dynamics, this idea that we've got is really coming from the customer base in terms of a shorter term engagement to make sure that they think they're doing the right things, but are they? And private equity may have 6 or 8 different businesses that they've got to look at the same time. And we don't want to. You mentioned the word agile. We need to be agile about how we do this, and so we're trying to do an engagement light version of what we typically would do, and then bring to bear some of the really cool partnerships that we're developing as well with companies like Leaderscape and others. And happy to have this opportunity to learn more about how there might be ways that we could do some work together as well. So that rethink and reset is going to be something we're going to be talking a lot about, certainly over the next 3, 4, or 5 months, depending on how long the craziness goes on, and probably into next year, frankly.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think you're right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether you watched Bill Gates's interview this morning on CNBC, but realistically, you're not going to have football games. I mean, mass football games until there's a vaccine, right?
Yeah.
And we're looking at least 18 months till that happens. I mean, once there's
we lose you, Chris?
Yeah, I was going to say, am I the only one that lost him?
Yeah, we lost him.
therapeutics, then you can. Am I back?
Yeah.
You're back.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, the days of like a big college football game or a pro football game, that's not going to happen until there's a vaccine.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So it's not a V-shaped recovery. It's going to be a hockey stick. And I think if you watch the world economic leaders, that's the messaging they're starting to do now, because in the U.S. our recovery is going to be totally different than what's going to happen in India or Africa or South America. I mean, some of those economies, it's just going to be terrible. I mean, they have no health system. They can't social distance. They have no money.
No.
And it's just going to run like wildfire through the system. So
yeah. I don't think we don't know the long-term effects. That's the scary thing.
No.
Absolutely, you're right. But just to top on too, not make this too to extend on too long, but I guess what Chris is also saying is I'm looking at this slide you've got up, Jonathan, and areas that I could potentially see in this reset and rethink sphere that we're kind of trying to build here. Advisory and business consulting, audit potentially, HR, PEO potentially. We do have an HR resource to bring to a solution, but certainly procurement services and then technology services. Those are areas that as we're engaged with these clients, we're going to get tapped on the shoulder to help them with. And I'm ring out loud, and we won't answer it now in this call, but are there ways for us to kind of promote each other and maybe go arm in arm or, shoulder to shoulder into some of these engagements, bring each other in respectively?
Yeah. I can't see where that would not work and be a great fit after, hearing the last couple hours. That I think, as we were going through this, I was thinking beyond Business Central and ERP and what button we click to, get a process to run. But about this slide really is there's a bigger opportunity here than I think we went into this with. But all up, what you see on the slide there, all up is about 720 people in this group. And technologies, where we all sit, that LLC, we're at about 104. And so we're the largest company outside of the CPA firm. But all up, still a pretty good size footprint here.
Certainly so. Yep.
Yeah, so lots of resources. Jonathan, I don't know that I have anything more to add, just maybe a quick comment about, we've done a lot of these partnerships and arrangements before where We work with a lot of software houses like Software House International, SHI, CDW. You probably know that name. We've worked for probably close to 20 years with Tatum Partners. They do a lot of outsourced CFO and not so much turnarounds specifically, but you know, a lot of restructuring and helping businesses get good systems and controls in place and putting accounting practices in. A lot of that, of course, involves ripping out QuickBooks or some legacy system for something a little more modern. So we've done a lot of work with them, and you know, just have a wealth of connectivity there with a lot of these other partners. And so this thing we're talking about here is not, this is not our first time to partner with folks, and we really value these, you know, beyond just the little one-off things that might get sent to us from Microsoft or another publisher. So, you know, I think there's a pretty deep well here if we think through this at some point.
Okay, well, good. Well, I appreciate all your time today, and,
Yeah.
and great effort and a great conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Jonathan, great job.
Yeah, well done.
Well, I appreciate that, and again, I appreciate everybody sparing some extra time to actually let this get to its natural completion. I didn't have anything else to show or talk about. The last slide I had was just where we're at. We're all over the place, so we can help as far as, you know, where your clients may be.
Okay.
So the very last slide I had was where do we go next? And it sounds like maybe there's just potential for more conversation around, you know, you guys campaign for the Rethink and Reset, you know, how we could potentially be part of that, but also, you know, just the other clients that you're serving, you know, how we can sort of help each other get into these engagements and help these customers and get value in their business. So.
Well, we're gonna.
Yeah,
I think by early next week, mid next week, we'll kind of have it fleshed out a little bit. I'll send it over to you. You guys take a look at it, and you know, and then we'll take a look and see if we can do some sort of joint marketing, if it makes sense, or however you guys want to handle it. I've been having a lot of success doing LinkedIn posts. You know, most of them get, you know, 2,000 to 4,000 views.
Yeah.
And you know, and anybody that's out there giving some good basic advice and some good basic thought processing about what to do right now, you know, people are reading it because they're trying to figure things out. So
Yeah.
Actually heard our marketing is. Oh, go ahead, Brian.
I was going to say there's a lot of that happening right now where people are, you know, they're working, but obviously it's a different environment, and so we're seeing a huge uptick in people looking at webinars and our online content, and where that stuff had kind of, you know, been a little flat for a long time. We're seeing a huge uptick in that, and so I don't know if people are just, you know, they're kind of working at home, but they've got time now to do some of these things, and so.
Oh yeah, yep.
It's crazy out there. So.
All right. Well, I'll send that over to you Tuesday or Wednesday, and then you guys can kind of think about it and see what you want to do, and then we go from there.
Sounds great. And again, I'll provide this deck and
Awesome.
the video to you folks once I get that rendered and published. And then I look forward to reconnecting next week and just seeing how we could, you know, grow this partnership.
Awesome.
And as you do that, ladies and gentlemen, I would also ask you to think about, you're in different places than we are, and vice versa, obviously. So, you know, maybe there's ways that we can figure out, again, under the right set of circumstances, and we're willing to think it through with you to try to flush it out. And as we exchange more information, you know, how are we able to help each other, bring each other into different engagements that,
right,
you know, might be an accretive type of thing, you know, 1 + 1 equaling more than 2 to an end user, to a client.
Yeah. Agreed. And I think that's exactly how it would be.
Well, thank you all.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
everybody.
Stay safe
Thank
and
you.
have a nice long weekend. All right.
Yes. Thank you.
Likewise.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.